Today, we're digging into a story that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a spy thriller, but it's all too real. It involves the assassination of a general, a mysterious group called the Golden Valley Warriors, and at the center of it all, the arrest of a 6-year-old girl.
So let's just jump right in. I want you to look at this number, 6. That's the age of a little girl who was just arrested in Myanmar. Not for some small thing, but in connection with an assassination. Yeah, you heard that right.
So the really unsettling question is why? Why would a 6-year-old be arrested for something like this? It's what this whole explainer is about. How does a child that young get caught up in a story of serious political violence? To figure that out, we have to pull on the thread and see where it leads.
All right, so let's start with the official story, with the facts as they were laid out by the authorities. We're going to look at what the government is telling its own people and the rest of the world. Okay, so according to Myanmar state media, a total of 16 people were detained. You can see the breakdown here, 13 men and 3 women. They're all supposedly connected to this group, the Golden Valley Warriors, and the arrests themselves happened in a bunch of different places.
But tucked away inside those numbers is this just incredibly disturbing detail. Of the 3 women they arrested, one was the wife, and another was the 6-year-old daughter of the man they say actually pulled the trigger. So this wasn't just some precise police operation. This was an entire family being dragged into this.
And here's where it gets even more chilling. It's what the official report doesn't say. As this quote from the state-run newspaper points out, they announced the arrests, but offered zero explanation for why the little girl was being held. No charge, no justification, just nothing. So what on earth could trigger such a crazy response? Well, the catalyst, the event that kicked all of this off, was the assassination of a very high-profile retired general. The target was a man named Cho Tun Aung, and he wasn't just some random officer. We're talking about a retired general who was also a former ambassador. So a pretty big deal, and he was shot down right in front of his own house in Yangon, which is Myanmar's biggest city.
The official report broke down how the attack happened. It was brazen, and it seems like it was well planned. Apparently, 2 suspects just rolled up on bicycles, super low-key, shot the general, and then took off to a safe house nearby. A total classic hit, right in the middle of a major city. Now, this wasn't just some random act of violence. A group immediately stepped up to claim responsibility. So let's talk about them for a second. The Golden Valley Warriors. So, who are they? Well, to put it simply, the Golden Valley Warriors are an anti-junta group. They're one of a whole bunch of these pro-democracy guerrilla forces that have popped up to fight the military government. And by claiming this hit, they were sending a very loud, very clear message.
Okay, so we've got an assassination, we have a group claiming they did it, and we have this really shocking arrest. But none of this is happening in a bubble. To really get why this all went down, we need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture, the civil war tearing Myanmar apart.
The whole crisis really exploded back in February 2021. That's when the military, which is known as the junta, took over in a coup, kicking out the democratically elected government. And that one single event just plunged the entire country into this brutal, messy civil war that's still going on right now.
And, this isn't a simple 2-sided war. It's way more complicated. You've basically got 3 main players. First, there's the military junta, the guys in charge. Then you've got the pro-democracy guerrillas, like the Golden Valley Warriors who are fighting them. And then, jumping into the fight, are all these long-standing ethnic armed groups who kind of see this as their chance to gain more autonomy.
So, how's the war actually going? Well, on one hand, it looks like the junta is really struggling. Over the last few months, the anti-junta forces have been launching these big, coordinated attacks, and they've actually managed to take over a good chunk of territory, especially along the borders. But, and this is super important, nobody should be counting the military out just yet. Most experts who watch this stuff agree that even with these major losses on the ground, the junta is nowhere near being defeated.
So why is the junta still so powerful? Well, it comes down to a few key things. They have a really strong air force with access to advanced jets from Russia. They also get military support from big allies like China. This means they can still hit back hard from the air, even in places where they've lost control on the ground.
All right, let's bring this all back. We've gone from the arrest of a little kid all the way out to the dynamics of a huge civil war. So now let's connect the dots and figure out what this one single tragic incident really tells us about the conflict as a whole. What this whole thing shows is that this war isn't just being fought in some remote jungle anymore.
The assassination of a general in Yangon, that proves that the brutal tactics of this conflict are now happening in broad daylight on the streets of the country's biggest city.
And what it reveals is this really vicious cycle, right? You have an active urban warfare by an anti-junta group, and it's immediately met with this massive crackdown by the junta. But it's a crackdown that wasn't just aimed at the people who did it. It was a net cast so wide, it caught an entire family. And that brings us to the most crucial point. In this war, the line between who's a fighter and who's a civilian is just being totally erased. When tactics like collective punishment are used, where a whole family pays for one person's actions, it means nobody is safe. Nobody is shielded from this, not even a 6-year-old child.
And that leaves us with one last, really haunting question. When a government starts arresting children without even bothering to make up a crime for them, what does that tell us about where this conflict is headed? And what hope is there for any kind of peace?